Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the ARCA Series, a rewind show. I'm Garth Allen, this is Racing News Now, and today we're talking about race number 2 of the 2022 ARCA Series West season of the NAPA Auto Parts 150 from the Irwindale Speedway, race 1 of 2 from Irwindale this season on the ARCA West schedule. And to be completely honest with you, this was one of those races that was pretty forgettable, to be completely honest. Not much happening in this race. One driver leading every single lap in this race. Not a whole lot of racing throughout the pack to begin with. I mean, you'd have a little bit of racing on restarts, but otherwise everybody kind of single filed out, and that was about all she wrote. And it was a 15-car race at a half-mile track. That doesn't lend itself too well to great racing, especially when I feel like the level of competitive cars is down a bit this season in ARCA West. We don't have quite as many championship contending cars as what we did last year. Something about those BMR cars just seems a tad slower than what it was in 2021. Maybe it's the switch to Chevy and the fact that they don't have Toyota backing anymore. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the switch to Chevy and not having Toyota backing behind them anymore. I'm not really sure what it is, but it seems like through the first couple races of the year, they don't quite have the speed as what they've had before. We'll see what happens in the remaining races, but it seems like the Sunrise Fords kind of have BMR's number this year. The Sunrise Fords were extremely fast in this race, and I'm counting Trevor Huddleston in that, as he is in a High Point car, which is basically a Sunrise car, as we saw last year with Dean Thompson. Not a Sunrise car in name, completely separate team, but they do get a lot of help from Sunrise, basically a third Sunrise Ford. Also, by the way, good to see Trevor Huddleston back in the race this week, as he was not at Phoenix, so good to see him back, even if it's not in a Sunrise car. He was very fast in this race, but as I said, it was the three Sunrise cars that were basically head and shoulders above everyone else in this race. Tanner Reif in the 9, Jake Drew in the 6, and Trevor Huddleston in the 50 for High Point really were the three best cars in this race. Now, when we get to the results, they weren't the top three at the end of this race, because there was really one and only big controversial thing to happen in this race, and we will get to that. But first, let's look at your caution flags in this race. 3 caution flags, total of 14 laps. Not a lot of cautions to bunch the field up in this one. First one came at lap 61 as Joey East got into the wall in turn 4, and that would kill his competitive night. He was probably a top 5, top 6 car before this, and unfortunately was not able to really contend after that point. Of course, we had a break at lap 77, and then we went green almost to the end of the race after the break, until Trevor Huddleston and Jake Drew were working through lap traffic with 3 laps left in the race. Jake Drew gets into the back of the 11 car of Chris Loudon and sends him spinning into turn 3. That sets up an overtime restart. On the restart, Trevor Huddleston spins the tires from second. Tanner Reif has led every lap up to this point, and I'm sure you can figure out from that, when I said one driver led every lap in this race, Tanner Reif won his first career race in this race. We're not talking about that at the moment, though. We're talking about that final restart. Trevor Huddleston started P2 outside of Tanner Reif. Jake Drew starts 3rd, with Cole Moore in the 99 car starting 4th. Trevor Huddleston spins the tires on the restart, or what seemed like spinning the tires. Maybe he missed a shift, something along those lines. Missed a shift, spun the tires, something to that effect happened on the restart for the 50 car of Trevor Huddleston. He did not get going nearly as quickly as everyone else did. Cole Moore, you got 3 laps left. Cole Moore is hammered down into turn 1, trying to get everything he can at the end of the race, thinking he's still got a shot to win this race. Gets into the back of Trevor Huddleston, turns him to the left. Huddleston bangs doors with the 6 car of Jake Drew. They get shoved down to the inside. Cole Moore gets around both of them. That gives Tanner Reif enough of a gap that he never had any pressure for the remainder of the race. Tanner Reif, the 16-year-old, his second race in the ARCA Series West, leads every lap, wins from the pole, an absolutely dominating performance out of Tanner Reif. I really would have liked to have seen what could have happened on that final restart, though, had Huddleston not spun the tires and everybody was on an even playing field with Tanner Reif. Could anyone have done anything with him on that final restart? We will never know. But the fact of the matter is, Tanner Reif won this race in a very impressive fashion. I was not expecting this, I'll be honest with you. I didn't really know anything about Tanner Reif when it was announced he was going to be in that 9 car this season. I had no idea what to expect out of him this season in that car. If this is any indication, look out, because we might have a serious championship threat in that 9 car this season. Not that we didn't last year with Jake Drew. Jake Drew tied for the championship last year, but I think we definitely have a serious championship threat in that 9 car now. And now the question becomes, how much pressure does this put on Jake Drew to win a race now? He went all of last season without winning a race. Yes, he technically tied for the championship, and had Jesse Love not made that extra pass on the last lap at Phoenix, Jake Drew would have won the championship without winning a race last year. But he's gone a full season last year and now 2 races into this year without winning a race. Tanner Reif has been in the Sunrise Ford for 2 races now, has not only won a race, but dominated a race. I don't think there was any question that he was the strongest car at Irwindale on Saturday night and should have won that race. So now, how much pressure does this put on Jake Drew to win a race now? His teammate has gone out basically straight out of the gate and won a race. Is the pressure on Jake Drew now to perform to win a race? I think it is, because Tanner Reif clearly showed those Sunrise Fords are capable of winning, and Jake Drew wasn't a huge factor in this race. Ran about 3rd most of the night. Qualified in 6th, so had a bit of a gap to make up at the beginning of the race. Settled in about 2nd or 3rd. Was really even with Trevor Huddleston most of the night. Had a pretty good battle with him for 2nd going most of the night. But Tanner Reif was head and shoulders above both of them, and neither one of them really could keep tabs on Tanner Reif for most of the night. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I think Jake Drew is going to be very competitive on the road courses. I think he'll win at least one of the road courses. We got 3 of them this season. I think he'll win at least one of them. The question is, can he win on the ovals, and how is he going to do comparatively to his teammate Tanner Reif, now that we've seen Tanner Reif can win a race? So let's look at your results from this race. Of course, Tanner Reif did win this one, leading all 153 laps in the NAPA Auto Parts 150, including the 3 overtime laps. Cole Moore snuck through on that final restart to pick up a 2nd place finish. Great job there. Cole Moore sneakily is continuing to put up better and better performances, it seems like, each outing he has. I'm curious to see what he can do for the remainder of this season. Will Cole Moore win a race? I've been very impressed with what I've seen out of Cole Moore. He's been a little bit off, especially early last season, but he seems, near the end of last season, he really seemed to start to pick things up, and especially now as we get into this season, he does seem to be firing on all cylinders, and I think he might be a threat to win a race this season. We'll have to see what happens there. His teammate Austin Herzog came home in 3rd. He started 8th in this race, and to be honest, I wasn't super impressed with what I saw out of Austin Herzog in this race. Wasn't super competitive, and again, it may be that the BMR cars are not what they were when they were Toyotas. I'm not really sure on that. It'll be interesting to see what these BMR Chevys can do going forward this season, but I don't know. I wasn't super impressed with Austin Herzog in this race. We'll see what he can do going forward. One race in, I don't really count Phoenix, as Phoenix is not a good litmus test of what these guys can do when you've got the main ARCA cars and the East cars thrown in that are historically slightly faster than the West cars when they throw them in a combo race. So I don't count Phoenix. We'll count this as the first real West race, and I wasn't super impressed with Austin Herzog in this race. We will see what happens after this. Jake Drew, after his scuffle with Trevor Huddleston, landed in 4th at the end of the race, and PJ Pedroncelli, after getting some contact early in the race, ripping off part of the left side of the car, was a lap down early in the race, came back for a top 5 finish in 5th. Rest of your top 10, Trevor Huddleston landed in 6th, last car on the lead lap. Takuma Koga, Sebastian Arias, Todd Souza, and Joey East. Final page 11th through 15th, Nick Joannidis, Bridget Burgess, Chris Loudon, Stafford Smith, and Paul Pedroncelli. So that's your results from the Napa Auto Parts 150. Working on a Tanner Reif interview. We'll see how that works out with his schedule. I've got a busy week myself this week, but we're going to really try to get that fit in because I do want to talk to Tanner and see his thoughts on his first win. He was... That's the most excited I think I've seen anybody after having won a race in a long time. Doesn't matter the level of on the NASCAR ladder. That is, I think, the most excited I've seen anyone win a race. So I'm excited to talk to Tanner. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully we can get our schedules to mesh this week and we can get something worked out there. So let's look at your point standings following this race. 2 races into the West season for 2022. Jake Drew is your points leader after 2 races, but only by 3 points now over Tanner Reif. Cole Moore sits in third, 4 points back, 8 points back, and fourth is Austin Herzog. Todd Souza also sits in the top 5, 12 points out. You see PJ Pedroncelli, Joey East, Takuma Koga, Sebastian Arias, and Bridget Burgess, the rest of the top 10. 12 drivers have started both races so far in the West Series this season. Of course, that top 10 has started every race this season, as well as Chris Loudon, who sits 13th in points, and Paul Pedroncelli, who is 21st in points. But that's your point standings following the NAPA Auto Parts 150 from Irwindale, and I believe that'll do it for us on this ARCA Rewind show. I know it's a little short, but not much to talk about in this one, to be completely honest. I tried to talk as much as I could to give you something to watch here, but there really wasn't a lot to talk about in this race. Not a lot happened in this race. Tanner Reif kind of stunk up the show. Good for him, not so great for the viewing audience. But like I said, we'll try and talk to him at some point this week. I'm excited to talk to him as he was very excited after this win, and I would love to get his thoughts on all of that. But keep an eye out for that this week. Make sure you're subscribed and your notifications are turned on so you know when that comes out this week. But as always, we want to thank our Patreon supporter, Regional Manager William Holmes. Thank you as always for your support. It is greatly appreciated. If you would like to be a patron of RNN, the link is down below in the description. Patreon.com/RacingNewsNow. Not required by any means, but definitely appreciated when you want to support RNN in that way. But I believe that'll do it for us on this one. So at that, I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.